This is Embodied Astrology. My name is Renee Sills, and I am so happy to be here with you for another edition of Embodied Astrology. This is the 10th year of this project. I believe it actually began in Cancer season back in 2014. And over the last decade, it has changed and grown a lot, and it continues to change and grow. Every episode is a new adventure. So over the last several weeks since Gemini season, I have been preparing for this transmission for Cancer season for the solstice episode. And as you can imagine, a month or so of preparation has resulted in potentially being over-prepared or having a lot of different ideas floating through my mind in terms of what the astrology is speaking to right now. And so I'm coming to this reading full. It is the last day of Gemini season. The sun is at what's called the anaretic degree of Gemini as I'm recording this. And it is about 1:15 Pacific time. So where I am on the traditional and stolen homelands of the Chinook, Multnomah, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes and bands who have and do make their home along the Columbia and the Willamette rivers in the Pacific Northwest of Turtle Island, so-called United States. It is about high noon. The sun is high overhead. Today, as I'm recording, the sun is also perfecting a square to Neptune in Pisces. And I'm going to be talking about this aspect a little bit as I get into the Cancer season reading, because these squares from Gemini to Pisces are definitely influencing the season and especially the first part of the season. But I wanted to bring that in now because one of the ways that I've been feeling this astrology is in fullness. There's a lot that's going on in the mental, imaginal, conceptual spaces. And wherever our minds are moving, so are our bodies and our emotions and our spirits. And I come into this reading with a lot moving through me, a lot of ideas, a lot of feelings, a lot of unknown. And I just want to put it out there that I don't know what's going to come through in this episode. And I know now that whatever I offer is only going to be a small piece of what I could offer. I'm going to trust that whatever comes through is the right thing to come through for you and for me at this time. And I'm also going to remind us all that astrology is a creative and symbolic practice. It is a practice of attunement with light, with celestial cycles and rhythm, with terrestrial intelligence, and with our own awareness as we tune in with symbolism. And so every astrologer will have their different take. As you listen, notice what moves you, what resonates for you. Take what works, leave the rest. Not everything is for everyone. And always tune in with the meanings that are most meaningful for you. And that might not necessarily be what I'm interpreting, but what you interpret through your felt sense of my words. So today is June 19th. It is Juneteenth here in the United States, which are not always so united. It is a holiday that some consider to be maybe a more accurate holiday of independence. This is a holiday that commemorates and celebrates the emancipation of enslaved people. And it's also a holiday that kind of points out how long it took that even after the federal government had declared slavery to be illegal, it still took another 2 years or so for enslaved people to be freed officially throughout the United States. And slavery continues to this day. This is a country that has definitely been built upon the bodies and the labor and the death and the extraction of Black people, of Black life, and also so many different peoples who have come here to take part in this experiment of the melting pot. This is a country that definitely has become wealthy through extraction and labor of resource, and that includes human resource that includes human life. And it continues until this day. And we are all alive in a world that its mechanisms really run on enslavement and run on extraction. And those are going to be themes throughout this reading. And so I also want to preface that I come to astrology from an orientation that is politicized, that is queer, and that really seeks to hold a broad spectrum of possible meaning and not shy away from the big stuff, but also really seeking a integration between the personal and the political. Clearly, I'm a human being. Clearly, I'm in my own space of evolution. Clearly, I have opinions. And, being in my positionality, I am definitely biased and ignorant about a lot, as are you, as are we all. So again, take what works, leave the rest. Feel free to expand in your own consciousness around what I can offer here. And as it is Juneteenth, I really want to encourage any listeners who resonate with the spirit of this holiday to really consider in Cancer season an intention of reparation. And reparation can mean so many things. It can mean involving yourself in repair work on all levels. It can definitely mean redistributing and reallocating funds towards people whose ancestors were stolen, were enslaved, towards people who still are facing discrimination and economic oppression wherever you might be. Reparation may be celebration for you. It may be a time of gathering and celebrating freedom, even in a moment where freedom feels limited in a lot of corners of our lives and kind of broad spaces in the world, and also threatened. And it can mean beyond the human realm, right? The violences that have been imposed on human bodies have also been imposed upon the earth. And as we move into Cancer season, this is a time to tend to the life source that sources all of us. I'm going to include some links in the show notes for redistribution of wealth and participation in reparation efforts here in the United States for anyone who's interested. So check that out if it's something that you want to participate with. All right, Cancer season starts tomorrow. Happy solstice. Cancer season is the beginning of the summer and the winter seasons, depending on which hemisphere you find yourself in. In the summer, where I am in the Northern Hemisphere, the days are at their longest right now. So I'm on the eve of the solstice. It's getting light super early in the morning. It's staying light really late at night. I personally love this season. It feels really enlivening to me and comforting. I'm a summer baby, and my season is coming up next in Leo season. So this always feels like an exciting time of the year for me. The opposite side of summer, of course, is winter. And for my folks in the Southern Hemisphere, you are in a period of time when the nights are the longest. And I don't know how that feels for you, but I know for me, around the winter solstice, up where I am, it is a time of hibernation and coming inside. And so however you might resonate with the idea of greatest light or greatest dark in our daytime, nighttime, seasonal cycles, this is a period of time to attune to that concept as an energetic and embodied manifestation. Where are you in the world right now? What does the solstice mean for your location, for your energy, for your vitality, for your community? What's growing? What's vibrant? What traditions and rituals are being practiced? All across the world, solstices and equinoxes are marked in different ways. There are seasons of celebration everywhere that mark the passage of the earth around the sun and honor the seasonal cycles. So at the solstice, it is a time to really tune in with this moment in time. Where is the earth in its relationship to the sun, and what does that mean for light and growth? Now, on a symbolic level, the solstice marks a turning point. This is a period of time when we reach one of the quarterly markings of the year. Solstices and equinoxes hold those four cardinal directions or four corners of a map of light and season that the Earth traverses in its yearly cycle around the sun. This map is actually what tropical astrology or Western astrology is founded upon. Contrary to some popular opinion that sometimes can conflate the constellations with the seasonal map, just a note for anybody who maybe doesn't know or gets confused sometimes, there are lots of different astrologies that exist in the world, and many different astrologies map different cycles. So there are forms of astrology, sidereal astrology, Vedic astrology, that work with the constellations and their visibility in the sky over the course of the Earth's yearly rotation around the sun. And then in tropical astrology, we work with seasonal light. We work with the temperament and the mood of the season. And so this is an earth-based and a sun-based language, or a light-based language. And of course, when we're thinking about the earth and our relationship with the sun, we also have to think about the moon as one of our luminaries that can reflect the sun's light to us, and whose presence actually contributes to the stability of Earth. So if we didn't have the moon, our Earth would be spinning too fast to sustain life. And this is something that I definitely want to be thinking about as we move into Cancer season. Cancer is a sign that is governed by the moon and is associated with the lunar power or the lunar influence to regulate life. With the moon, we are always tuning in with rhythm. The moon goes through its cycles and its seasons once every 29 days or so. Everything that you do that is rhythmic and cyclical on some level is related to lunar energy and Cancerian influence. Your sleep cycles, your eating cycles, your growth cycles, your personal care and familial tending cycles. What do you need to attend to on the day-to-day? If you're a gardener, you need to water and weed, and those jobs just keep on coming. They don't end. If you tend a body, or if you care for a family, you know that people have to eat all the time. People have to sleep all the time. And there are growth cycles that move in rhythm and continuity across generations. This is lunar influence. This is Cancerian energetics. No matter what your sun sign is or how you might identify yourself zodiacally, you have Cancer in your chart. And so as we move into Cancer season, if you don't know already, you might want to learn a little bit about where Cancer is in your chart. In a little bit, I'm going to be sharing my screen, and I'll be sharing a chart from my favorite astrology website, astro.com. I received no commission from advertising for astro.com. I just love them. They are a free website. They provide so much astrological resource. You can run all different kinds of charts through astro.com. They even have interpretive charts. So if you don't know what your signs are, you can get an interpretive chart through astro.com, and it will give you its kind of cookbook explanations of what it means to have Cancer wherever you have Cancer in your chart. So learn what house Cancer is in for you. Learn if you have planetary or angular placements in Cancer, and the meanings of current astrology will expand exponentially the more that you learn how to connect and how to relate with these influences and energies. So, back to the solstice, we are at a turning point in the year. And energetically and symbolically, this turning point is related to a kind of map of a life cycle that the zodiac can symbolize. There are so many meanings contained in the zodiac. So, again, I'm just offering a small slice of what's possible here. But one possible meaning or interpretation that we might glean from the zodiacal map is the meaning of an entire life cycle. So, beginning with the first degree of Aries, which is emergence of an individuated life form, and ending at the very last degree of Pisces, which is dissolution and dissolving of individuation, re-emergence and reintegration with the everything. The map of the zodiac shows us passages of time, development, cognition, how we might feel ourselves growing and maturing emotionally, psychologically, and relationally. So, Cancer represents a turning point also in how we might feel ourselves moving energetically. It is what we might consider to be the first quarter of a life cycle. And if we're thinking of it in a kind of life cycle symbolism, this is a period of time when a young person starts to become an adult. Maybe not quite an old person yet, but a person with a little bit more maturity, a person who has some experience that they have gathered around their own personal quests and the need to self-define. And this turning point, as we move into Cancer season, is described as a period of internal and relational development when the awareness of the importance of relationship and family and tribe and community starts to really impress itself upon the psyche. As we move into Cancer season in 2024, the light of the sun is following the lights of Mercury and Venus. And Mercury and Venus have already entered Cancer in the last couple of days. Just yesterday, for me, I'm back in the past, on June 18th, there was actually a conjunction of Mercury and Venus at the very first degree of Cancer. And tomorrow on the solstice, June 20th, the sun will illuminate that degree as well. So the first degree of Cancer has a really interesting symbolism connected with it. And over the course of this reading, I'll be bringing in some of the degree symbolism, otherwise known as the Sabian symbols. Study of the Sabian symbols could take you multiple lifetimes. I believe it takes many people multiple lifetimes. I hope that I have multiple lifetimes to explore the Sabian symbols. Since I'm just in this lifetime, as far as I know, with this path, I am a young student of the Sabian symbols. So again, I'm offering what is occurring to me right now. So one of the interpretations of the Sabian symbol for the first degree of Cancer is a sailor on a ship is lowering one flag and unfurling and raising another. The descriptions of this symbol, as have been expanded upon by the astrologers Dane Rudhyar and James Burgess, both talk about the reorientation towards identification with family and with kin, a reorientation from a path of individualism towards a path of collectivism or community. There's also a deeper message inside of this symbol that speaks to adaptability and the importance of being able to change course and sometimes change allegiances. With the symbol of a flag, of course, we have a symbol that is often associated with some kind of identity or identification. A lot of groups, including nations, but also affinity groups and pirates, use flags to display their kind of notions of unity or identification. So with the idea of lowering one flag and raising another flag, we might also consider how identification is changing right now and how allegiances may be shifting. There's a lot of conversation that I'm sure we could have on a geopolitical level about how this might be expressed and felt at this time. But to stay in the personal right now, I think that it's important to really kind of tune in with what is emerging as a sense of deeper commitment and where uh, identities that don't serve that deeper commitment are ready to be lowered, right? Where the kind of uplifting of those identities are ready to subside. And maybe where we might feel ourselves in our allegiances starting to change, not believing in the same things that we used to believe in, not putting ourselves out in the same ways that we used to put ourselves out. In the 2024 year ahead reading, I talked about this period in the year as being a time when the acceleration of global change really starts to increase. You can find the 2024 year reading on all of Embodied Astrology's channels. I'll include links in the show notes as well. But a major focus for me in that reading had to do with polarity shifts, with the idea that we are moving from kind of a unipolar world into a multipolar world. When it comes to identification, I think that on a collective evolutionary level, it is really important that we are moving into a time when human beings can expand our consciousness to include many different points of view that we may be still unfamiliar with or starting to gain kind of familiarity or cognition of. And as perspective expands, as new stories are being told, old stories then get challenged. And so it may be that the old stories of empire and nationalism just don't really hit the same way that they used to. It may be that old stories of personal identity and personal allegiance are starting to feel a little stale or confining. As we move into Cancer season, we are also moving with the influence of this square that I talked about a little while ago. I was mentioning that today the sun is at the anaretic degree, the last degree of Gemini, and it is squaring Neptune at the anaretic degree or the last degree of Pisces. Neptune is an outer planet. It has a long orbit around the sun, I believe 165 years. It has been in the sign Pisces since 2011. And in 2025, Neptune will start to make its way out of Pisces and into Aries. Due to retrogradation, it's going to take an entire year, but by the beginning of 2026, Neptune will firmly be in the tropical sign of Aries for several years to come. And that will mark a new chapter in the consciousness of our collective experience. Neptune as a symbol, being an outer planet, speaks to the transpersonal, to events that are bigger than any of our individual lives. 165 years encapsulates multiple generations and certainly multiple timelines. Over the course of 165 years, a lot can happen, and the dream of the era will change significantly. Two key words that are important for Neptune are dream and longing. Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces, so it has affiliation with this sign. It is considered to be in domicile or at home here. And so the influences of Pisces and Neptune in many ways are quite similar. And both of these symbols speak to the dream-like experience of life. You know that experience, I'm sure, because life is strange and getting stranger, and time keeps on slipping into the future. And I'm sure that you have had multiple experiences in your life where you wonder to yourself, is this real? or how could this be real? Or this seems strange. It seems like a dream. When you think back to the past is held in a kind of the hazy substance of memory. You and I might share an experience, but 10 minutes later, we'll both have different stories about what that experience was, because memory is subjective and it is held inside of consciousness in ways that get molded and shaped by our imaginations, by our previous experiences, by our attachments, by our desires, by our aversions, etc. And so this keyword of dream, when we're thinking about Neptune and the sign Pisces, we want to raise that into a transpersonal or collective experience. Now, many spiritual and esoteric traditions talk about the dreamlike quality of life. And you may have come across the word Maya as a description of this dreamlike quality of life. And the word Maya also sometimes is translated as illusion, which is another key word for Neptune. There's the illusion of reality, and reality is also always changing. And so the present is already in the past. The present is an enormity of confluence and convergence of limitless factors. So many different variables that we, for the most part, have no idea are existing. But all those variables are combining in every single moment to create this experience that we have of temporal phenomenal reality. If you have ever engaged in any kind of spiritual practice or creative practice, or if you have ever taken drugs, especially the psychedelic kind, and by the way, those are all keywords, key ideas for Neptune and Pisces: spirituality, creativity, and psychedelics. Any of those experiences might have really brought you into a profound awareness that reality is not real, that reality is changing all of the time. Through a spiritual practice, particularly practices of non-dualism, of animism, certain streams of Buddhism or Vedanta, spiritualism, there are lots of experiences that we might have of recognizing that what seems solid is not solid at all. Physics will tell us this as well. The quantum mechanists out there will remind us all the time that solid material is actually mostly made up of dark matter, of movement inside of mysterious space. If we study any kind of phenomenology, we will soon recognize that any substance that seems stable is only stable for a very short amount of time until it becomes something else. And everything that's arising is arising emergently and cooperatively. So the co-arising of reality is dependent upon everything else. And everything is always changing. And so nothing is stable and nothing is solid. Now, this can drive us crazy, if we happen to open too much in a meditative experience, take too many psychedelics, get so pulled by the creative muse that maybe we lose tether with consensus reality. This can bring us into feelings of insanity. And that is another key word for Neptune and Pisces, the loss of reality. And we are living at a time when I believe that this experience is something that a lot of people are tapping into and tuning into, many by choice, many not by choice, many productively and creatively and generatively, and many destructively, and in a kind of hallucinatory illusion space. And so when we're working with Neptune, especially at the very last degree of Pisces, we're working with the residue of the collective dream space. And we're also working with the end of a dream or the end of an era. Now, the last time Neptune was in Pisces 165 years ago, these were the days of the Civil War here in the United States. These were days when oil was first being drilled and extracted from the ground. These were times when there was a kind of rapid expansion of theft of indigenous land and genocide of indigenous peoples here on Turtle Island. This was a time when there was a proliferation of spiritualism and a lot of folks practicing and recognizing that they could speak to those who no longer inhabited corporeal forms and were beyond the body. This was a time when media was changing a lot, and particularly technologies of photography and storytelling were changing very rapidly. And in that change, there were new capacities to kind of move people's attention and direct consciousness. What was happening for you in your lineage, in your consciousness of geopolitics, in your consciousness of your local histories 165 years ago? It might be interesting to meditate a little bit on what you know about history so that you can tune in with how those dreams might be influencing the unreality of right now. Of course, we are here in the dream, and inside the dream, we have longing. So this brings me to the second keyword that I wanted to explore for Neptune and for Pisces. So the longing of a generation or the longing of an era really gets stimulated when we're working with big Neptune energy or big Pisces energy. Over the course of 2023 through 2026, there are several influences that are bringing big Pisces energy and big Neptune energy. I'm not going to go into all of them right now. If you've been listening to Embodied Astrology, and certainly if you participate in the Embodied Astrology spaces, you are probably aware of a lot of these influences. Two of our facilitators at Embodied Astrology, Gabs 404 and Sherry Taylor, have been working explicitly with Pisces and Neptune over the last couple of years. Sherry has been working with Saturn's presence in Pisces currently, and Gabs this year is working with the anaretic degree of Neptune at the last degree of Pisces. And in these spaces with Sherry and Gabs, a lot of what is getting explored are dreams and dream spaces, and also longings and desires, but how longing and desire can become a kind of fantasy or illusion, and how we need to work through a constant discernment and refinement so that we can really tune into what we might connect with as the longing of our soul or the longing of our spirits. And this is very different than sensory longing. This is very different than materialist longing. So when I say longing, I'm not necessarily talking about anything that can be objectified or anything that can be privatized or owned, although that might be part of the dream or part of the longing. I am speaking about something that is moving through the body, moving through the psyche, the consciousness, and our collective spaces, again, our transpersonal spaces, that move us in the direction of some kind of dream, of some kind of idea that we have of, oh, this is the pinnacle. This is the thing that I'm trying to attain. The very last degree of Pisces, the anaretic degree of Pisces in its Sabian symbol, is represented as a giant face that somebody is seeing in a outcropping of rocks. And in seeing this face, This person identifies God or identifies spirit. They see the potential for what they can become. And over the course of their life, they begin to resemble this face. The symbolism of the last degree of Pisces speaks to us of the ways that ideals are constructed, and particularly ideals of divinity and God and spirit are constructed by people. So we choose to put our faith in certain things. And in 2024, if we think about the last 165 years, we might think about the faith of materialism or the faith of consumerism or capitalism. Over the last 165 years, the industrial age and the age of privatization have been huge factors in how the world and the dream of phenomenal reality have been built and shaped. Now, again, the longing here is not necessarily in the ownership of material. The longing is something that is an inner quality, an energy, or an emotion. And so meditate for yourself. Think on it for yourself. What is the longing that compels a person or groups of people to try and possess, to try and own? What are the longings that would compel a person or groups of people to innovate and create technologies and infrastructures and industries that are rooted in extraction and that seek to create wealth for individuals at the expense of environmental harmony and health? The longing, I'm just going to propose, is a kind of individualism, seeking of potency in personal power. The longing might be a longing for control, a longing to feel one's dominance or dominion. And I'm just going to propose that we are living at a time when the dreams of dominion and the dreams of individual power have become dreams that are not only no longer productive, if they ever were, but are dreams that are highly destructive. And we are at the end of a dream cycle. And the longing now of the collective, or the longing of individuals as we navigate through this time of ecological collapse and the fall of empires, might be shifting, might be changing. And so we might find ourselves feeling as if we're in the middle of a horrible dream. Why are multiple genocides happening simultaneously? Why have they been happening simultaneously? Not just for the last 8 months, not just for the last 100 years, but for the last several generations and centuries. What is this dream that compels us to constantly seek personal power and personal safety at the expense of communal well-being? What is this dream that keeps us in mechanisms and behaviors of consumerism, that makes it so challenging to imagine outside of consumer lifestyles, that it feels like we're trying to, run through water? I don't know if you've ever had a dream like that, where you're trying to run, but it's like you're in water and you can't move, or you have sleep paralysis or something like that. At the very last degree of Pisces, Neptune here, I really want to call in a phrase that Gabs 404, who's been working with Neptune and Pisces with Embodied Astrology this year, has introduced into our collective space. And the phrase here is, the earth is pregnant with alternate futures. And the idea is, or my idea is with this phrase, is that as children of the earth, as part of creation, we are all pregnant with alternate futures. And pregnancy as a phenomena is a phenomena of growth and expansion, but also of mystery. It is an incredibly precarious place where we don't know yet if we're going to survive the passage. Birthing people die in birth, and babies die in birth, and that happens frequently, more frequently than is necessary, especially in the state of the world these days, and for certain groups of people in certain places. But in pregnancy, we have a lot of anticipation. We have a lot of ideas of what something might become. And inside of that anticipation and inside of those ideas, there's probably a fair amount of fear. There's a lot of unknowing, and there needs to be some kind of trust. This is also a life cycle and life threshold that really requires community, requires support and assistance. Certainly people have birthed alone. Some will say you're born alone, you die alone. But if you were born and you're still alive, you were held fairly soon. And you continue to be held in some way, shape, or form in order to get where you are now. And regardless of support or lack of support in the human realms, if a person is birthing, they need sustenance, they need environmental holding, they need water, they need to bathe, they need nourishment. And so this is also a life cycle and a life passage that really requires connection. And in its literal phenomena, right, of birthing, there is a deep entanglement of life forms. Individuality and individualism is part of the dream. We all begin as co-identified, totally embedded beings inside of a larger whole. And throughout our lives, we'll explore how that continues to be the case. The last degree of Gemini, where the sun is today and where Mercury and Venus have recently been, is a degree point that also speaks to what we uplift and what we uphold in its symbol of bathing beauties. And in the description of this Sabian symbol, there's a kind of elaboration on how customs and cultural ideals form the notion of what is beauty in any particular or given time or given moment. And the trends and the styles that come in and out of popularity are going to define for a lot of us how we feel ourselves, how we know our own place in the larger schematic of things. It will define what we seek to exemplify and the possibility models that we look up to and that we emulate. And so the relationship between the last degree of Gemini and the last degree of Pisces both have to do with idealism and what we are looking up to. Now, in the last degree of Pisces, we have a looking up to something that is beyond the human, that is in the spirit or in the realms of divinity. And in the last degree of Gemini, we have a looking up to other people. We have a looking up to trends and fashion and what is considered to be beautiful or the aesthetic ideal of the time, the place, and the culture. Now, the square between them, again, for me, really elicits this feeling of ideals changing. And as we move into Cancer season, we have three big activations of this square. So Mercury squared Neptune in Pisces, then Venus, then the sun. Mercury and Venus are both inner planets. They're closer to the sun than Earth is. In their symbolism, they speak to our immediate experiences and really important aspects of our personality. They have to do with cognition and intellect and perception when we're working with Mercury, how we make sense of the data and the information of our lives. They have to do with our values and our sensory intelligences and our bodies and our desires and needs when we're working with Venus, as well as our relationships and how we are in relationship with the material and with resources in our lives. The sun is energy, it is consciousness, it brings light, it brings life. And so as Mercury, Venus, and then the sun move into Cancer, crossing the last degree of Gemini and squaring Neptune, the feeling for me is that a lot of us are rethinking our ideals. What we used to look up to, what we used to strive for, is no longer relevant in some way, shape, or form. It is losing its shine and its appeal. And new ideas, new possibilities, and new allegiances are starting to impress themselves upon our spirits and our consciousness and our energies. Now, for a lot of us, this is also a period of time that is bringing us into some new kind of perspective around group identity and where we might feel our affiliations, loyalties, and allegiances with other people. Now, this might be as close in as significant partners, immediate family, and friends. This might also be as big as a national identity or cultural identity. This is a period of time when, and we're going to talk about this as I move through the Cancer forecast, but this is a period of time when increasingly there is a need to be vocal and authentic, to be expressive of what is true internally. And what is true internally is not always logical. It's not always super well thought out and easy to articulate. There's a lot of tension right now between expressing what is arising in a kind of embodied and emotional presence and expressing things from more logical, linear, and intellectual spaces. Neither is better. Both are necessary. If you have one without the other, you have an imbalance. But as we move into Cancer season, I think a lot of folks are wanting to feel a deeper sense of unity inside of their community. But those connections may also require work. And the work may be the work of solidarity and reciprocity, but the work may also be the work of disagreement and conflict. There's a need right now to clarify and refine our connections and the ways that we are in connection. And what that is going to involve is going to be different for everyone. And I'll do my best to expand on that in the sign-based horoscopes that I'll record after this forecast. So we're 45 minutes in and we are still in the very first day of Cancer. The second day of Cancer is a full moon, and Cancer season has 2 full moons, so it's a unique season this year in that way. We have a full moon on the 21st of June and another full moon on the 21st of July. Both full moons are in Capricorn, right at the first degree of Capricorn and at the last degree of Capricorn. Both of these full moons are in aspect to Mars, trining with Mars. I'll be talking about that through the forecast. And both of these full moons are in hard aspect to one of the outer planets. So the first full moon is squaring Neptune, right? I was just talking about that. And then the second full moon on July 21st is opposing Pluto. The first and the last degrees of Capricorn really speak to power and how power is constructed. The degree point for the full moon, which is, if you want to look it up, actually going to be 2 degrees of Capricorn. We're reading ahead in the Sabian symbols. So the degree of the full moon, I think, is 1 degree and some amount of arc minutes. And so when you look into that Sabian symbol, you'll find a description of 3 stained glass windows in a church, one of which has been shattered by war. The description of this symbol speaks to the impact of war. It speaks to the awareness in the leader of war, whoever that might be, the governor-in-chief, the president, the prime minister, the warmonger, I don't know what their title is. Um, the recognition that war is always going to come at a cost, and the cost is the glue of the social fabric. So, with the destruction of beauty and art, and so we have stained glass as the idea of something that exalts the spirit. When we look at it, we go, oh, this is beautiful. And seeing beauty, experiencing beauty through any of our sense faculties regulates our nervous systems. When we are in beautiful spaces, we are more inclined to feel safe than when we are in spaces that exhibit disharmony. The beauty that has been shattered by war is a symbol of the fracturing of the social glue or the communal glue. It is a symbol of trauma. It's a symbol of mistrust in one another as well as in governance. It's a symbol of the impact of aggression, and the impact of aggression does not create relational glue. We have to do the repair work in order to build that glue again once it has been destroyed. Now, it's just one of the windows that has been shattered. Two are remaining. And so this is also a symbol that we can still look for beauty, but that we have to reconstruct and we have to repair and we have to address whatever it is that has shattered that stained glass window. Now, I don't know about you, but over the last 8-9 months of my life, I've been watching genocide live streamed on my phone. And though it's not new, though there have been simultaneous genocides occurring for generations, the technology that delivers that into my eyeballs has advanced. And this is the first time in my life that I feel as close to it as I have always been. So as a citizen of the United States of America, as a person who lives in a light-skinned body, I have definitely been afforded a fair amount of comfort and privilege and distance from the kinds of violences that many people experience here and all over. And for those of you who are listening, if you have access to the internet, if you understand English, and if you have the time to watch this recording, you might not live in the same positional circumstances that I do. You might not experience the same kinds of privileges, but you definitely are able to experience some of your own. And you might also be having an experience right now of a kind of increasing proximity to violence. And I'm going to say the anxiety that accompanies that, which is that it's moving closer. And as we watch heads of governments make decisions that destroy tens of thousands of people's lives, commit ecocide and domicide, destroy thousands of years of civilization and growth and community, there is a functioning, right, in our mirror neurons and in our psychologies and also in our intellects, and anybody who's paying attention to the correlation and relationship between the police forces, particularly in the Western world, in the United States and the UK and Western Europe, and the Israeli army. There is a correlation between the technologies of war and the innovation of war that is going to increasingly rely on automation and allow for people to press buttons from a really big distance and then destroy entire lives, destroy communities, to send in automated tanks, robots, etc. And I don't know about you, but for me, I have a kind of increasing feeling of this is happening in a lot of places. It's only a matter of time until it's happening to me and to my life. It's already happening to my neighbors. It's been happening in Black and Brown communities and communities of color in the United States since the United States was formed. It's been happening to Indigenous communities since the United States was formed. It's actually what the United States was built on, was this kind of violence and destruction. And the connections between violences are happening more rapidly for me right now. I don't know if they are for you. But the connections between cobalt mining in Congo and ongoing genocide driven by consumerism and extraction, and the technologies that are being developed for war and for policing, those are firing rapidly for me. The connections between artificial intelligence and surveillance and war and social control, those are happening rapidly for me. I'm not going to go further down that rabbit hole right now. I'm going to actually pull back because I want to, again, remember the dream. We are living at a time when information is proliferating really quickly, and we are getting lots of different information through handheld devices, through screens, through media, all of which or most of which is manipulated in order to sell things, right? To participate with advertising money and things like that. When people are feeling anxious and fearful and ungrounded, we are easier to divide, separate, and control. When we are really feeling a lot of mistrust and paranoia, we are much easier to divide and separate and control. So even though all of that is there on the table, and I'm sure there's a lot more, I don't know what your bad dream is feeling like these days, or where you're paranoid. I don't even know if it's paranoid, where your anxiety is spinning you. But there's a lot on the table, and all of that is there, but that's not all that's there. So 3 stained glass windows, 2 are still intact. How do we orient ourselves towards what is beautiful without clinging to a fixed idea of what it has to be? 3 stained glass windows, one of which is shattered, all of which are in the edifice of a spiritual building. It's very easy to look at what has already been constructed, what already uplifts the idea of wholeness, of unity, of beauty, of goodness, and think like that's the only thing that it could be. If that's lost, then we have nothing. Meanwhile, life is really resilient. Life is intelligent. Life is creative. Natural intelligence is constantly regenerating and recycling. And no matter the circumstance, no matter the level of trauma, there are always organic intelligences that know how to find their way back into creative, generative generosity. And we can see this in people, we can see this in communities, we can see this in the natural world. And that includes human beings, as much as maybe sometimes it doesn't feel like that. And so it feels to me that this is really a period of time when, again, we want to be thinking about what are we upholding and how do we orient or reorient so that our ideas of beauty, of goodness, of divinity, of the role models that we're looking up to can shift from something that has already been constructed, perhaps already been constructed by dominant power, into what reconstructs and regenerates, into the ingenuity of how we work with what is falling apart or what has fallen apart. Now, the last full moon in this season, on the last day of Cancer season at 29 degrees of Capricorn, is a symbol of a secret meeting of leaders. And the description of this symbol speaks to the idea that it's actually a small group of people who control the dream of reality and how reality is unfolding and manifesting for the collective. Now, we might take that literally and think about small groups of people as the wealthiest 1%, or, the name brand families or something like that. And certainly, I think a lot of people will entertain themselves going down that road. I'm going to think about this as the ways that a small group of people put ideas out into the world of what we want to uphold, and then large groups of people embody those ideals. And I've been really inspired by movements of folks, particularly young people right now, who are divesting from celebrity culture and really kind of critically looking at who are role models or possibility models in the world who are working for the collective good. Who are people who are identifying with a kind of collective or larger cause, and who's not. So when we see possibilities of leadership that uplift, again, individualism, privatization of wealth, personal gain, and ego, that certainly stimulates a collective dream and a collective longing. There are lots of people who might seek to emulate that kind of ego or bravado. But when we see public figures, celebrities, and possibility models really putting themselves out for the greater good, being in ways in the public that have humility, that are curious, that are learning, maybe that offer some kind of intimacy into their vulnerability and their process of learning, that also provides a different kind of role model. And my feeling for these two full moons bookending Cancer season is that this is a season when power and those who are in power need to be examined really carefully and really closely. Throughout the season, and certainly as we get into July, there are more and more examples that we're going to be able to pinpoint around charismatic leaders expressing themselves in ways that we can examine. We can look for the nuance, and we can feel into the sentiment that is shared and then spread because of their modeling. If you are in any kind of position to be a possibility model in your community, know that who you look to as your role models and your possibility guidance is also really important for who is looking up to you. This is a season to seek to align yourself with people who are upholding and uplifting values that resonate for you. And I would encourage you to really look towards leaders who are leading from places of collectivism and community, who model what it is for us to be in co-leadership or co-authorship and humility and curiosity, who are not trying to put themselves forward as knowing it all and being the best and having all the answers, but who are coming from places of open-mindedness and willingness to learn. Now, the full moon, again, is important period in our solar cycles. So we're in Cancer season, but the moons will be in Capricorn, Cancer's opposite sign. And when we have the full moon, we have big polarizing energies. We have the polarity of these oppositional zodiacal archetypes being amplified. And the Cancer Capricorn archetypes are archetypes of power and leadership, as power and leadership shape home and community. These are archetypes that are portraying or embodying in some ways the parental archetypes, the maternal and the paternal possibilities, the nurturing, the tending to what is inside, what is small, what is delicate, what is fragile, what is growing, the need to nourish, the need to move slow, to be present, to be attentive, and also the protectors, the ones that are moving out into the world, that are creating boundaries and containers of safety for families and communities to exist inside of. Lineage and legacy are two really big keywords for Cancer and Capricorn both. And as these full moons are working so deeply with the outer planets, with Neptune and with Pluto, again, I'm taking this as a symbol of the lineage and the legacy of an era, really kind of becoming quite illustrated and blatant, and inviting all of us to participate as siblings, as very dispersed members of the human family, in the ways that we are constructing this lineage and this legacy. This is a period of time to really invest yourself in big time scales. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling distraught, if you're feeling upset about what's happening now, you might want to learn about people who lived 100 years ago or 200 years ago or 1,000 years ago, and they were dealing with really similar circumstances. They were also facing the end of the world as they knew it, and they were role models in their community in some way. How did they uplift creativity? How did they bring people together? How did they feed into the present moment of their lives to create goodness and nourishment that we are drawing upon now? And as you connect with those ancestors, consider how you are a future ancestor. You are participating in world making for generations yet to come. And if you have your own children or grandchildren, extended family members who are significantly younger than you, this might be quite easy to connect with. If you don't have children, you might imagine into how you as a future ancestor are shaping the ground for people in the future who resonate with your passions, with your interests, with your creativity, or maybe who are here in the places and the spaces of the future where you're occupying at present. Working across timelines also allows us to release the idea of perfect outcome, and radical acceptance of what is here and now, for me, feels like one of the main practices or pieces of advice that I might offer to myself or to anyone else, and something that I've really been trying to work with myself. And so the idea of radical acceptance is that it is what it is. It's too big for any of us to control it. It has been shaped by millennia. It has been shaped by countless people and more than people and energies and collectives and archetypes. It is bigger and broader and vaster than you can comprehend, than I can comprehend. It is too big and too complex to make sense of. And it's going to continue to evolve in ways that we cannot predict and that we cannot control. And so in any moment as it's arising, this is the dream. It is what it is. And when we practice tuning into the subtle frequencies of the dream, we might be able to tune into what is beautiful now, and to where we can find points of connection and inspiration that can infuse the landscape of the dream. If we are only dwelling in anxiety or fear or judgment or dislike or hatred or whatever, those are also hues. Those are pigments of dream that we are putting out into the collective water. And how we hold ourselves and uphold ourselves during this time ripples out and is going to be part of the world making for the future. I want to invite you to come and participate with world making, with embodied astrology. It's really a big emphasis in what we do, and certainly in what we're doing this year at EA. We are a collective, and all of our facilitators are really interested in tuning in with astrology as a technology that can help us world make. At the full moons, our facilitator, Janata Petrus, who is a playwright and an author and an infinitely creative spirit, holds artistic alchemy gatherings, not always exactly on the full moon, but around the full moon. So she'll be holding 2 gatherings in Cancer season. She has a gathering on the 23rd of June and the 21st of July. The 21st is that last full moon of Cancer season. Janata is a Cancer, and I'm sure that these iterations of artistic alchemy are going to be generous and potent, as they always are. In artistic alchemy, we are working with creative survival and thriving. This is a place certainly to think about your creative practice and your practices of artistry, your poetry, your drawing, your sculpture, your performance, etc. It's definitely a place where people can workshop and discuss their creative projects and get support in the community space, but also through Janata's prompts. She's always offering prompts for personal reflection and creative growth. But this is also a space to really be coming into communal support around living creatively and living as art and applying ourselves to creative praxis no matter what it is that we are making or doing. And that's so much of the support that I've received from these spaces. I'm not always able to keep up on various creative projects, but I am someone who really deeply desires to live in creative ways. And sometimes that can feel so incredibly challenging, trying to survive inside of 2024 and my life and capitalism and all the things. You know how it goes. It can be hard to feel ourselves as artists when we're always in a hustle or trying to survive in grind culture. And Janata spaces are super supportive for connecting and reconnecting with creative spirit as it moves through us, and investing in small practices and tangible goals in terms of just our life practices, as well as specific projects that can help us to celebrate the small wins and support one another in opening up our ideas of what creativity could look and feel like. I mentioned Sherry and Gabs as 2 facilitators who are both working with Pisces energy over the course of 2024. And Sherry will be starting a new cycle of her teaching on June 29th. In 2024, Sherry is working with devotional cycles, and each cycle has 3 chapters to it. In these cycles, she's introducing different aspects of occult and mystic astrology and symbolism. Sherry is an incredible researcher. She is a death doula, a clinical psychologist, a grief worker, and also an amazing astrologer, and somebody who is very invested in working and reworking myth. Over the last 2 years at Embodied Astrology, she's been working with Saturn's presence in Pisces, and I'll be talking about Saturn in a little bit. Saturn is moving towards conjunction with Neptune, and they'll actually come together in the very first degree of Aries in the beginning of 2026. And when we were thinking about how to shape this year's offerings at Embodied Astrology, we were thinking about this being a time leading us to this conjunction of Saturn and Neptune in 2026. That conjunction coincides with 2 other outer planet shifts, Uranus into Gemini and Pluto into Aquarius. All of those planets will be aspecting each other. Uranus and Pluto will be trine, and both of them will be sextiling Saturn and Neptune in Aries. I was talking about the first degree of Cancer a while ago, and Saturn and Neptune will be conjoining at the very first degree of Aries. And you may have heard me when I was talking about the life cycle of astrology as, the very first degree of Aries is emergence. It is a new idea. This is a new life. This is a birth of some kind. And so this term that Gabs introduced to our space, the Earth is pregnant with alternate futures, is really speaking to this coming birth or rebirth in 2026. And so, from a symbolic astrological standpoint, we are in the last days of something. So, again, the end of a dream, the end of an empire, in a kind of breakdown and the overwhelm of all the pieces as they fall apart. And beginning in 2026, a new notion of humanness and aliveness and what it means to be here in our individual bodies, if we are still here, will start to become more coherent. Between now and then, there is a lot to do. Sherry is a death doula. Part of her life offering and her service in this world is the work of shepherding people through dying processes. Now, death doulas do a lot of different things. They help families and individuals figure out the logistics of dying because it's complicated and there's a lot to think about. But they also help individuals and communities work with the energetic and the emotional and the psychological and the spiritual aspects of dying. Because of her unique lens and synthesis of practices, I think that Sherry is one of the most highly skilled practitioners I'm in relationship with right now, particularly for these times, in the collection of resources that she has to offer right now. And her work this year is through a series of devotional cohorts called Salve e Coagula. This is Latin for dissolving and congealing. She's working specifically with Saturn and Pisces as an archetype, but also with the mythic remembering and retelling of Saturn as a feminine entity and a queer entity, not only this kind of archetype of patriarchy that a lot of folks who are familiar with more contemporary astrology might relate with Saturn. Her devotional cohorts are inviting folks to really work with planetary allyship and cultivate their personal relationship with Saturn as the guardian of time and as a force and archetypal energy that can help us do the work of death doulaing not only our personal projects, ideas, identities, etc., but also in the collective, participating with the dissolving and then the re-emergence of what is coming next. Finally, Gabs holds a space called the Nebula Lab, and they'll be having another meeting on July 6th, which is the day after the Cancer new moon. This is also right around the time that both Saturn and Neptune are stationing retrograde in Pisces. I'll be talking about that in a moment as well. Gabs is a photographer and a documentarian. They work a lot with storytelling and visual storytelling. At Embodied Astrology, we emphasize synthesis and application of astrology. We're not so interested in being didactic and formulaic about what does astrology mean, and we're really not interested in just the application of astrology to, like, you know, your personal day-to-day. I personally don't think it's that effective because people are all different, and how we work with astrology has to take into consideration the conditions that a person might be living in. So, you know, opportunity moments as they present themselves for one person might be very different than the next. So we're really trying to work with astrology in more experimental and collaborative ways at Embodied Astrology, and holding space for a lot of co-creation of what the symbolic language can be. In Gab's Nebula Lab, this is a space where they are using astrology to look at the construction of reality through visual imagery and media. They're looking at prior Neptune transits and how cycles with Neptune have coincided with development and innovation of photography and visual imagery, and now with artificial intelligence. And they're also inviting us all into an exploration of recreating the past in order to reshape the present and give imaginative material to the future. We're working in that space to disrupt time to replace current periods with past and future periods, and also to explore how image and story really shape the way that consciousness can manifest and move. So this is a highly creative space for folks who are interested in photography and visual storytelling. This is an opportunity to work with community. It's also an opportunity to get inspired by astrology. And for folks who are interested in queering astrology and like doing astrology as a practice that's not just in your mind or working with charting or mapping, but actually producing something that might be a visual archive or representation or expression, this is a great opportunity for you as well. So Janata, Sherry, and Gabs all have gatherings coming up in Cancer season. You can find all the information at embodiedastrology.com and in the show notes. All of Embodied Astrology's offerings are always provided by a tiered pricing scale, and we have scholarship for all who need. You can also always access the recordings if you can't attend live. All right, so we've made it now into the first day of Cancer season, and this full moon, we've jumped across to the last day of Cancer season and the second full moon. Now let's fill in the space between. All right. So I mentioned a moment ago that Saturn and Neptune are both stationing retrograde in Cancer season. Saturn stations retrograde on the 29th of June. Neptune stations retrograde on July 2nd. These are both outer planets, and outer planet retrogrades happen every year for several months. In a lot of ways, they are more subtle and less acute than the inner planet retrogrades. The Mercury, Venus, and Mars retrogrades are often really strongly felt, whereas the outer planet retrogrades, because they last for a long time, tend to be more subtle. And again, when we're working with outer planets, we are also working with the transpersonal and the collective. That said, the outer planets are also describing periods of time in which energies are integrating. Processes might need to slow down. They might need to deviate and take different kinds of courses of possibility. Both Saturn and Neptune crossed the point that their retrogrades will return them to in March of this year. And so you might think about what have the last 3 months or so, or if you're listening further in the future, think back to March of 2024. What have the last 3 months or so been introducing as new movements, new potentialities, and new growths, particularly in the area of your chart where Pisces is? Now, again, I'm going to get a little bit more detailed for each sign in the horoscopes for Cancer season. So if you don't know where Pisces is in your chart, don't worry, just listen to your horoscope. On a general and collective level, Pisces is not just the realm of the dreams, but the kind of collective atmosphere. And so with Pisces, we can certainly associate the air, the actual atmosphere, the water, right? Water is circulating. There is water everywhere, humidity in the air, groundwater, rain, ocean, lakes, the water in your toilet, etc. Water in your body, right, has been cycled through every form of water ever. And so with Saturn and Neptune both stationing retrograde, for me, this feels like a period of time when awareness and consciousness of this particular era, which some people call the Anthropocene, is really becoming more acute. Now, the Anthropocene is described as a period of time when human impact on the earth becomes the most significant impact, and human development and industry and pollution and waste start to imbalance the earth's own cycles and rhythms, and then we have environmental breakdowns. So we have increasing natural disasters, fires, floods, hurricanes, the melting of the ice caps, rising sea levels, climate change, so more extreme temperatures, etc. There's critique of the language of the Anthropocene because it's kind of vague and it doesn't really place the causes of this environmental devastation more acutely enough. And so what it doesn't describe is that humans have lived on Earth at this point for 250 million years. There have been many societies and civilizations that held millions and upwards of people that managed to live on planet Earth without destabilizing the Earth cycles so profoundly. The causes of the Anthropocene are the same causes that the social devastation that we're experiencing now are rooted in. And those are causes of colonialism, imperialism, and supremacy. Groups of people asserting dominion, asserting dominance over other groups of people, coming from certain places, by and large, the northern hemisphere, the northwestern portion of it, and extracting from, enslaving, and really creating the most extreme and worst outcomes for people from the global south. And this is, I think, also a period of time when the naming and the recognition of the causes of the Anthropocene are also beginning to proliferate more widely. And it's something that a lot of folks, myself included, are developing awareness of. And in that awareness, there may be agreement, there may be conflict, there may be defensiveness and fragility, there may be a desire to ignore, there may also be a sense of overwhelm and unknowing of how anything can change, because this momentum is massive. And again, no individual can change the course of it. It's simply too big. It's been happening for too long. There are too many wheels in the machine moving for any of us in our small individuated lives to do much at all. However, the dream of the moment is shifting, and there are new dreams that are emerging, and this is happening in tandem and simultaneity as there is more loss. Another key word for Pisces is grief. This is a really important keyword, I think, especially at this time, because there is so much to grieve and there is a residue of grief. The momentum of devastation, if we look back at like colonial legacy, and maybe take that all the way back to Rome, the momentum of loss and erasure, of separation from homeland, from family, destruction of environments and domicile, forced migration, loss of life, etc. It has been immense. And because these forces have been so persistent, I think probably most communities, many individuals, and all of our legacies are carrying a residue of grief that has not been given enough space and enough time, because the next wave of destruction, the next reason to grieve, has come too fast, and because there isn't a kind of collective container for that grief. I started today's episode by noting that it was Juneteenth. The United States still has yet to declare a kind of process of grieving and mourning the incredible losses that resulted from a nation built on enslavement. And until there is space and time and resource given to communities and given to individuals to grieve, to mourn our dead, to hold the immensity of loss, until that happens, that residue is still in our soma. It's still in our cultural bodies. It's not allowed to kind of be given to spirit, right? Like we can't just go in peace because it's still here, it's still lingering. And so we might also think of this period as a period that is haunted. Haunting and ghosts are other keywords for Pisces, and definitely also for Saturn and Neptune. When we think about phantoms of the past that are still here, that are still strong, that are still lingering. We are also living at a time when many people have been reawakening to their psychic and intuitive and spiritual capacities. I want to give a special shout out to millennials, and to especially to the folks who were born at the last Saturn Neptune conjunction in the late 80s. That was a conjunction in Capricorn. And I think that that generation, and certainly the period of time for the last 35, 40 years or so, has been a period of time when more and more people have been seeking to remember and reclaim and reawaken indigenous ways of knowing and ancestral technologies. And that might be astrology, right? In the last several decades, astrology has been booming. It might be other kinds of ancestral practices or spiritual traditions. There has really been a wave of remembering, especially when Pluto moved through Capricorn, and it's gonna dip back in for just its last hello in Capricorn in October. So it'll have like about a month from October until the middle of November that it's at the very last degree, the anaretic degree of Capricorn. And it entered Capricorn in 2008. And my experience, empirical evidence, just subjective, research, but certainly since 2008 until 2024, until the present moment, I've really noticed that there is a huge increase, or there's been a huge increase in awareness and practice of ancestral and indigenous traditions, and a kind of reclaiming of traditions that are that were erased, that were wiped out, especially with religious colonization and Christian terrorism. And over the course of these last 15, 16 years or so since Pluto came into Capricorn, and I think a lot of the folks who were born with the last Saturn-Neptune conjunction, there have been so many more spiritual teachings made available, indigenous teachings, new iterations of old technologies coming forward. And so I also want to uplift that in this conversation around grief, because I think that we have what we need. And it can be tempting, I'm tempted all the time, to really dwell on what's been lost, what's the problem, where is this wrong, where is this like so many shades of wrong and so fucked up, and it's going to take however many thousands of years or tens of thousands of years to X, Y, or Z. But human consciousness and earth consciousness is infinitely creative, adaptable, and resilient. And we have what we need. We have what we need here and now. We have had what we need. We do now. And what we need is changing day to day. And as we need it, we are growing it, we are cultivating it, we are coming into awareness of it. And sadly, but this happens to be true, a lot of times we don't know what we need until we're shown the opposite. So at a time of immense environmental instability and precarity, when so much is breaking down, so many people are remembering how to come back to spaces of spiritual coherence in new and different ways. There is a lot of movement right now in the work of death doula-ing. I hadn't even heard of death doulas until a couple of years ago, and now every second person I talk to is about to do a death doula training, because we are living at a time when we need everybody to be a death doula. Sherry actually recently did an episode with Elua Arthur, who is quite a well-known death doula and person working in the field of death. She founded a training program called Going with Grace. and has a book out. I forget the name, but I'll include the link in the show note. And their conversation was really profound. And they talked about how not having reverence for death, not having the skills and the capacity to work intelligently and compassionately with death uh, decreases our capacity to actually live, to connect, to relate, and really increases the propensity for oppression. And so being able to work skillfully with grief and to work skillfully with death is part of what is going to get us through these times. And so as Saturn and Neptune station retrograde, I really want to encourage folks to sense and feel into how you, in your unique positionality, in the ways that you connect with community, with family, and with yourself, might engage the destroyer archetype in ways that are an offering to life and to life processes. How can your care and your reverence for death and for those who have departed, especially our most recent ancestors and the children that have been taken too soon, how can you work with consciousness that really holds a lot of space for grieving, for remembrance, for commemoration, and for communion with those energies and with those spirits, so that there can be a kind of recycling of energy, a rebirthing of energy, which is what this time period is asking us for. As so much is falling apart, there is a lot of creativity that's opening. There is a lot that can get pulled at and brought into new shapes, but we have to have the skills to work with it. And the skills to work with it right now are not the ways that a lot of us have been taught to think about skills for working with things, which often have to do with moving forward, moving towards some kind of goal, applying some kind of control over material. The skills that we need right now are the skills of slowness, the skills of ceremony, the skills of spirit, the skills of being with and helping to release and to let go, and also grieving and mourning and feeling the feelings that are here at the end of something. Great book out there called Hospicing Modernity. I'll try and remember to put that into the show notes as well. But that's a book that has definitely been influencing us at Embodied Astrology this year profoundly. The first, I'm going to say, 2 weeks or so of Cancer season, from the solstice until the beginning of July, there are so many feelings. Mercury and Venus are both moving through Cancer. They are both aspecting Saturn and Neptune by trine. As Saturn and Neptune are in their storms, that means when they are slowing down and preparing to station retrograde. This is a period of time when emotional buildup feels really thick. There might be a sensation of deep overwhelm, of deep confusion for some folks, especially those of us without a lot of water in our chart. It could feel like, wow, there's just a lot that needs to be processed. And how do we get the time and the space to do it? I want to speak especially to the psychosomatic influences of this, which could result in bodily tension and places in our bodies that are holding on to a lot. This could be holding on to a lot of inflammation, holding on to kind of postural patterns that feel maladjusted or misadjusted. There could be extreme fatigue during this time, increased anxiety or agitation, sensations of confusion where it's hard to focus. Any kinds of practices that produce a kind of like organic release will be helpful. Gentle shaking. If you've ever taken a somatic space class with me, I offer classes almost every single week, usually on Mondays, where we do kind of bodily energetic practices to help work with the week ahead in astrology. And a lot of times we do gentle shaking. This is a traditional and deeply, time-tested movement, especially in the Qigong and Taoist physical practices or somatic practices. And shaking in this kind of gentle way really helps our bodies to release excess and residue tension. It helps us to recalibrate in our nervous systems. It's really good for our connective tissues and joints, as well as our organs and circulation. And it increases lymphatic drainage. And so, it doesn't have to be really intense. You don't have to like fling your body around unless you want to. You could just kind of gently shake or gently rock. Rocking, humming, swaying, any movements that emulate water and being in flow, including being in water and being in flow, would be really helpful during this time. Container for emotional processing is also really important. Peer support. You don't necessarily need to pay therapists a lot of money to hold space for you. You can train with your friends to hold space for one another. You might look into peer support counseling if that's a new idea for you. You might just be a natural at it or know people who are. If you're holding space for your friends, or if your friends are holding space for you, definitely try and practice reciprocity. We've got, for sure, people in our communities who are really good at holding space, and those people also need space held for them as well. And so if you know a person who's just like always such a good listener, always like ready to hold space, help you process through something, that person is probably really tired right now because they've probably been holding a lot of space for people. Please send them some love. Please give them a hug. Please offer to hold some space for them. Those people are not always great at taking up space. They can be better at holding space than really filling it. And so if you're like, how you doing? And they're like, fine, ask some deeper questions. Questions, curiosity, and attention are huge investments of currency and relationship. And asking questions can help people feel that their experiences are valid and that other people are interested. If you are someone that holds a lot of space and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, who is holding space for me right now? I really want to encourage you to ask for it. You can ask for it specifically, right? Like, could you listen to me for half an hour? I really don't want your advice. I just want to be able to process out loud. This is what feels like listening to me. Could you ask, follow-up questions? Can you get interested in some details? Can you just breathe with me? Can you put your hand on your heart and look at me a certain way if I'm going to share a certain thing with you? Sometimes we need to train the people that we're in relationship with to be good space tenders. Not everybody has had good modeling for that. It's not something that we really receive a lot of modeling for in dominant culture. And so one of the gifts of our times, along with being at a time when spiritual technologies and indigenous practices are being reawoken within the collective zeitgeist. Another gift of this time is the proliferation of psychology and therapeutic modalities, touch techniques, listening techniques, embodiment techniques. There are so many teachers, there are so many resources right now. This is a time to share and spread those capacities and skill build together. This is what the future needs. Yes, we need people politically organizing and activating and demonstrating and divesting, but we also need people skill sharing and really helping each other and helping our communities evolve and mature our emotional intelligence. So many of the movements, right, like activist spaces and movements, collapse and implode because there isn't emotional intelligence. There aren't skills to be working with the trauma that is resulting of going out and fighting against these oppressive forces. And so then oppression comes back into the space. There are the same kinds of embodiments of hierarchical dominance and power. There are the same misuses of power. There's the same ignoring of emotional need. That is not going to be effective in the long term. So we really need skill sharing right now, especially when it comes to working skillfully with emotions, with psychology, with energy, with spirit, and with body. The new moon, July 5th, is a new moon in Cancer, and this new moon comes right in the middle of the sign at a degree point that for me holds a lot of symbolic resonance. So if you've ever come across something called the Thema Mundi, this is the birth chart of the world. The Thema Mundi is a exquisite piece of symbolism, and it's something that astrologers have worked with for a really long time and continue to work with in order to understand signification of planetary and zodiacal energy, dignity and essential dignity, if those words mean something to you, and the kind of gestalt of intelligence that moves through the planetary bodies and their zodiacal homes. So this is a new moon that comes at the degree point of 15 degrees of Cancer, where the sun and the ascendant are in the Thema Mundi. To me, this is a symbol of a period of time in which we are really in this kind of birthing process. The sapien symbol for this degree point is a symbol of a group of people who have just enjoyed a sumptuous feast and they are satiated and well fed. The meaning that I'm making out of this symbol is that there is enough, there is abundance on earth. There's plenty, there's plenitude, but in order to experience that plenty and experience that abundance, there has to be a redistribution and reallocation of wealth. And there also needs to be different kinds of practices that we embody around what we see as resource. So again, this theme of not looking up to the same kinds of ideals of spiritual materialism or consumer materialism, but really shifting our ideals into the smaller, into the details, into the local, into the what is here, and into the ways that we can tend and attend to our connections and interconnections. This is a new moon that opposes Ceres in Capricorn. And this opposition to me brings a symbol of the need to care for the future, the need to care for the children, and a recognition that when we care for the small ones, we are caring for ourselves and for the whole in the long term. I've come across, some ideas that certain groups of people have about safety, and in these ideas, there is the positioning of children of their supposed enemy as embodying a, idea of lack of safety in the future. For example, if Zionists see Palestinian children and babies as future terrorists, and embark on a campaign of slaughtering those children and their families, with the justification that this will create safety for Jewish people or for Israelis, this is insanity. This is a delusion. I don't know how that could ever create safety. I don't know what kind of consciousness could ever conceive that level of destruction and violence would somehow result in safety. In order to achieve safety through those means, whoever is responsible for the bombing would have to kill absolutely everybody. At some point, our safety or our desire for safety, our notion of comfort, our notion of safety has to evolve to a recognition and understanding that it can only happen when we're taking care of our environment. We can only have enough when we're tending the earth. We can't inhale forever. If we're trying to consume everything and keep it all for ourselves, we get what the United States has, which is storehouses of grain going rancid. We have more food rotting than, we have more food rotting than we do people are starving. All of this aid being sent to Gaza can't get in because of this idea, this misplaced idea, this fearful idea of what would create safety. My desire is safety for myself, for Jewish people, for Palestinians, for everybody, for citizens of the world. My desire is safety for children, for old people, for adults, for families. The hallucinatory delusion that safety will somehow be produced through violence needs to be seen for what it is. And I think that this new moon is a time when we might really want to meditate on what actually provides safety, what actually provides abundance, how we might actually be satisfied and nourished. This is a new moon that is square to the nodal axis. This new moon happens right as Saturn and Neptune are both stationing retrograde. Mercury at this time has ingressed Leo and is in the very early degrees of Leo and opposing Pluto in Aquarius. Now, in the year ahead reading, in the 2024 reading, I talked about this period of time as being the time when this kind of rapid acceleration of the current moment, whether that's the environmental breakdown or war, geopolitical insanity, really gets the volume turned up. Me saying it is not me putting a spell out into the world. If you hear that and then you think, Renee, don't say that, don't make it true, you might want to check in with your own practices of radical acceptance and where you turn away from what is happening. In the turning away, in the refusing to look at something, we might also think that we're creating safety for ourselves. Oh, if I don't look at that destruction, then I won't feel fear. And then I'm not going to resonate fear out into the world. And so then I'll be able to manifest peace. If you don't look at what's happening, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. If you're in a position of comparative privilege, if you can move through your day without your neighborhood being bombed, if you can move through your day in a neighborhood that's still intact without worrying about whether or not your family members are going to be there when you come home, then you are in a position of comparative privilege. If you have enough to eat, if you have a stable home, if you can afford to get educated, right? It's like, if you're not looking at what's happening, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. Engaging with it doesn't require you to only look that way, right? We want to keep a kind of spectrum of what is in the three-dimensional environment around us, and how can we practice acceptance of what is without pushing any of it away, and then make skillful choices around what we tend. If I am keeping it in my consciousness that tens of thousands of people have had their lives ended over the last 8 months, in large part because the government of my country is funding genocide, then it has to be in my consciousness that 30 cents of every dollar I spend is going towards the weapons that the United States is supplying for this atrocity. If I can keep that in my consciousness, that might help compel and propel me to shift the ways that I engage with resource. That might help compel and propel me to invest in what is life-giving in new and different ways. If I want to reroute my resources, how can I divest from what takes from life and reinvest in what gives to life? My awareness of what's happening doesn't have to be a myopic focus and a clutching on that's the only reality. That's part of the reality that's happening in my world right now. But there are a lot of other parts of reality that are happening in my world, but they're not disconnected. So how can I participate in my world in ways that potentially could ripple out and feed or serve others? So with the symbol of this new moon, a group of people who have been well fed. You read the description for the symbol, and the astrologers are talking about how the notion of austerity as being closer to God is a false one. That true spiritual communion happens in relationship and celebration. There is enoughness, there is plenitude, there is abundance. When we can receive easily, we can give fully. I want to be at a big table with my friends and loved ones where everybody is fed. In the feeling of everybody being fed and having enough, then creativity flows, then conversation can happen, then we can get to know each other in new and different ways. How might we feed each other in this moment in new and different ways? How might you serve and feed the small pieces of your world and of your life? How can you work inside of your life to recognize where abundance already is and to participate in nourishing that abundance and sharing that abundance? As the new moon then begins to wax and we move towards the second full moon of Cancer season, right at the end, the sun will move through its trines with Saturn, its sextile with Uranus, its trine with Neptune. And over the course of this period of time, Cancerian intelligence, Cancerian energy is merging and blending with Piscean intelligence, Piscean energy. To me, this feels like the need to really invest ourselves in practices of family making and world making. It's very easy to judge and separate. We have a lot of examples of how to judge and how to separate, how to name and label and identify attributes that people have or groups of people have, how to position ourselves in difference. There's a lot of examples for that in the world. There are a lot of examples of kind of enforced homogeneity, right? Like, oh, we want to all be the same somehow. Like there's a need to kind of agree with a group norm. Healthy, vibrant families are families that have a lot of different characters in them, and everybody gets to kind of bring their best self and also their not best self to the table and still be held in their wholeness and their uniqueness. A healthy, vibrant home on Earth is a home that is flourishing with biodiversity. This is a period of time that definitely is asking us to reach out, to connect, to extend compassionately and with empathy, and to practice empathy, to practice feeling in our bodies, maybe where someone else is coming from, using the powers of our imagination to connect across difference. During this period of time, we also have a growing influence of Leo coming in. So Mercury enters Leo on July 2nd, Venus enters Leo on July 10th, and then of course the sun will enter Leo on July 22nd. As everybody moves into Leo, they will all be making significant aspects with the big planetary players. The first aspect these bodies will make as they enter Leo is an opposition to Pluto right at the first degree of Aquarius. We are living at a time when society and civilization is changing. The old era of, I don't know what you want to call it, like the industrial age, is changing. There are new needs for civilization and for humanity if we're going to survive. There are a lot of new technologies emerging, and there are also a lot of new intelligences, and that includes, constructed or artificial intelligence, but it also includes human intelligence and organic intelligence, and the ways that human beings relate with and remember our inherent embodied intelligence. After the opposition with Pluto, all these bodies will also form aspects to the north and the south node. So trine to the north node and a sextile to the south node. There is an increasing and acceleration of evolutionary energy right now. This is going to look probably like, a surprise to no one, but another worst year on record. I think it already has been when it comes to like environment and climate change. So rising sea levels, rising temperatures, fires. Good chance this is going to be a heavy fire season in the northern hemisphere, floods, hurricanes, that kinds of thing. And then the human and the environmental and the animal impact of that includes loss of life, loss of property, loss of home. It also includes migration and movement of people. It also includes solidarity efforts and mutual aid. It also includes education. It also includes activism and activation and a reorientation, again, around priorities. What are we investing in? What are we looking at as our possibility models? If everybody is trying to have a 3-car garage and 3 cars to put in that garage, we're fucked. If we can somehow shift societally so that, I'm only speaking for the United States here, right? Like if our government could invest in public transportation instead of continuing to invest in cars, that could be something that could actually make a tangible shift when it comes to carbon emissions, right? And the role that fossil fuels have to play in the current predicament. So this is a period of time when people are becoming more and more passionate, more outspoken, more expressive. Planets in Leo will also be forming sextiles with Jupiter in Gemini. This is encouragement for skill sharing, for communication, for co-education, for teaching one another through conversation. Definitely a lot of information proliferates on the internet and social media. This is a great way to share information. It's also hyper-inflammatory and often manipulated, and it's really hard to know what is real. It's really important right now to get diversity of information, and don't get it all from the internet. Go outside, talk to people, connect with people. Do not indulge the kind of separation and feelings of alienation that so much time on social media and the internet can produce. Get out there and connect in new and different ways. After the sextile with Jupiter, everybody in Leo will also square Uranus in Taurus. Again, society is shifting. In the 2024 year ahead reading, again, this was the period of time where I was saying, okay, there's like a amplification of environmental changes. We have Mars conjunct with Uranus around the middle of July. That's a period of time that I definitely have my eye on when it comes to climate change and related events, as well as the human-created stimulation of climate change, fossil fuel, and carbon release in particular. What produces the most carbon out there? War, bomb dropping. The tanks need a lot of gas. As Mercury, Venus, and then the Sun all enter Leo, this again is a period of time for expressive, passionate communication. I mentioned a while ago that we'll definitely be able to see a lot of examples of charismatic leadership around this time. And certainly that includes political leaders, but it also includes all kinds of leaders. So you are a leader, right? You're a potential possibility model for somebody out there. If you have some feelings about some things, this is a time to feel into what are the skillful and the caring ways that you can express those feelings. I want to encourage folks to speak from your heart and really take time to come into your heart. The seasons of Cancer and Leo want us to connect with our inner bodies, with our emotional selves, with our spiritual selves, and also with the embeddedness and interrelationship that our inner bodies are constantly in. So these are our relational selves, our environmental selves, the parts of our bodies that need to digest, right? That are made up of millions of, little organisms in our microbiome. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes right now because I'm almost done, but what else do I want to say? Connect and unify through joy, celebration, art, and that which energizes. Leo, as an energy that is coming in Cancer season, wants to help us to connect and to find feelings of belonging together. How can we experience belonging together in our uniqueness and differences, and also sometimes in our disagreements? Laughter, humor, music, dancing, food. Leo and Cancer as energies that are rising simultaneously in this kind of chart are energies that are definitely great for a big dinner party. Get some food and share it. Remember that language is really powerful, and how you put your words out there can shape experience. And as you speak from your heart, and also speak from your highest dreams, your greatest good, right? Speak from the place in you that is holding that life is a dream, and that inside of this dream, so much is happening. And as we speak something, we are bringing attention to what that is, and how we bring attention around something shapes the dream. If you are someone who has been hesitant to speak out, where, maybe you feel like you don't know enough, maybe you're scared of how you'll be received, or if there's going to be kind of like negative backlash, I really encourage you to speak from your heart. You don't need to speak from your mental concepts. You don't need to have all the facts and the information. Connect with your inner body. Connect with what you know is true. Connect with what you know is real for you in your own body. And try and speak from an immediate experience. Don't fear conflict, but don't let it make you hard. Right? Cancer as an energy wants to teach us to hold softness intelligently. And the boundaries that Cancer has don't have to be crabby claw boundaries. They can be boundaries that also hold safety and containment. And safety and containment, when we keep ourselves soft, means that we're not being reactive. We're not jumping into aggression or defensiveness. Holding ourselves with consciousness and awareness of the spaces that we're in is a practice. And that practice has to begin with loving and honoring yourself, and listening to your inner voice, and developing some kind of trust with your body and with its message. Authenticity liberates. So if you are fearful of speaking up or fearful of speaking out, your silence will not protect you. It will not create safety for you. Speaking your truth is liberating. And if speaking or expressing yourself authentically means that certain relationships need to shift and change, that may also be an opening for new relational experiences to come forward. Remember that there's no guarantee of safety. Safety is not something that you get when you incarnate into a human body. You live in a body that will age, that will get injured, where gravity is an enormous factor. Danger and risk are inherent inside of our human experiences, and death is the only thing that we can count on. It is absolutely the only guarantee. And so, if death is the only guarantee, then in this lifetime, focus on what is beautiful, what is potent, and what is right now and in the present, what deserves your love, your attention, and your care. Don't put it off for another time when you're going to feel, better or more wealthy or, something like that. Tend to what is beautiful right now. Remember that image of the stained glass windows, right? Exalt and uplift what is beautiful right now. There's so much that's shattered, but when we focus on beauty, when we focus on gratitude, when we connect through creativity, that builds the glue of our relationships, and there's no reason to put that off. All right, so the last thing that I'm going to say is that right at the end of Cancer season, Mars will enter Gemini on the 20th of July. Mars will be transiting Gemini until the beginning of September. And as Mars enters Gemini, it too will form an immediate aspect with Pluto, a trine. It will move towards a conjunction with Jupiter in Gemini. Towards the end of its transit, it will also be squaring Saturn and Neptune. And over the course of its transit, will be aspecting the North and the South nodes. So similar relationships as I just spoke about with planets moving through Leo. So as Mars enters Gemini and moves through Gemini, this is a time that illusions of simplicity are fractured. So prismatic reality gets expanded, and in prismatic reality, there is no set location. So there's nothing that we can grab on and say, oh, this is good and this is bad. Oh, this is me and this is you. This is up and this is down. Everything is relative, and everything is in a kind of co-arising again. So what this idea of like, what is real? As Mars moves into Gemini, there's also going to be even more, right? We're already in a time when there's just so much information coming through the media. But even more as Mars moves towards conjunction with Jupiter in Gemini, there's tons of information, tons of conversations, and a lot that's happening in the mental sphere and the conceptual sphere. Definitely double, triple check your facts. Just because you see something on someone's social media that you think is cool doesn't mean that whatever they posted is anything that they double or triple checked. Try and be conscious of how you're relating with information and slow down. There's a lot of information that's happening really fast, that's coming in really fast. Our practice as we work with information is to slow down and to notice how consciousness shapes reality. So what we're thinking immediately becomes a bodily and emotional experience, which then immediately moves out into the relational field. So if you're getting information and it's coming in, take your time to work with the information and feel how you want to be with it. What are responsible and skillful ways that you can be with this information? Don't look past the information that's also coming in from the natural world. That includes your environment, that includes your body, and that includes your breath. That includes the clouds as they're passing over the sky. That includes the water droplets as they collect on your window pane. That includes disaster, right? Like climate disaster. There's information that's coming in from natural intelligence all the time, from organic intelligence all the time. And if we're only paying attention to human fabricated information and what's flowing through, the social media and the internet or the airwaves in linguistic and, human gestures, we're missing an enormous amount of information. So it could be compelling to get, and it might be required to get pretty wrapped up in like, oh, this is the data, this is what's coming in. There's a lot of stimulation when Mars is in Gemini. It's a highly distractible influence, especially with Jupiter there. But we want to work with it through slowing down. Your breath is your ally, even when it's hard to breathe for all kinds of reasons. Your breath is your ally. Your mind and your breath will be working together. So if you have any kind of agency around your breath, use it. Remember that you can slow your breath down. You can inhale for a count of 5 and exhale for a count of 5. Pausing at the top of the inhale. Pausing at the bottom of the exhale will help bring some spaciousness into your thoughts. This is certainly an aspect that can increase anxiety. It can increase the mental movements. Your breath is an ally. Breathe with people. Breathe with other people. Engage with communal and collective breathing practices. This could look like playing a game with your kids, breathing together for a count, holding the breath for a count, breathing out for a count before we get to eat the snack. This could look like something that you practice with your partners. This could look like something that you do in your classrooms. Breathe with people. And finally, I've said this already, but I'll say it again and I'll end here. Nature is chaotic. Nature is creative. And chaos and creativity are part of the same thing. There is a divine order that is bigger than all of us. There is a natural order that is beyond anything that we could ever construct or control. Notice how everything is always changing all the time, all around you. And if you want to be effective in your life and in the world, work in small ways and work in ways that might be fractal. If you attend to one small relationship, remember and meditate on how that small relationship is going to ripple out in multiple directions. Make friends in new ways. A key word for Mars is hunting, and a key word for Gemini is connection. So this is a great time to hunt for new connections, new ways to get curious, to inspire and invoke conversations, and again, to come together, invite people to your dinner party. With that said, I want to invite you to a feast at Embodied Astrology. This is a feast that is going to be happening over the course of the next year. It is a feast hosted by myself and Ramon Parrish, another faculty member at Embodied Astrology. We are hosting a research project that's a participant-led astrology research project over the course of the next year with Jupiter in Gemini. This is a research project that's looking at how we can engage the technology of astrology for movement work, activism, and creative living. We have already had a couple of meetings. This is an open project. It is open to all who want to participate, and it's totally free, but it is participant driven. And so we are asking you to come with your curiosities and your interests and the ways that you might want to engage with research as a multidimensional, embodied, and also logistical and informational practice. We are creating resources for the next 25 years. We're looking at how can astrology help us map to 2050 and also potentially some amount of centuries beyond. Over the last millennia, or a couple of millennia, a lot of people have used astrology strategically for dominion, for oppression, for war. We want to use astrology for peace. We want to use astrology for world building and all kinds of good stuff. So we would love to be working with you. You can find more information in the show notes. Ramon and I will also be co-facilitating a retreat in October in Colorado at the Eco Dharma Center in the Rocky Mountains. Ramon's partner, Michelle Gabriel Parrish, will also be co-facilitating with us. The three of us are holding space for an on-land retreat where we're really going to be working with astrology as an embodied praxis. We're going to be working with the sky. We're going to be working with the land and the earth and what is growing there. And we are going to be working with each other. For sure, we're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff with astrology, like astro drama and embodied practices. We're also going to be using this time to engage strategically. Michelle is a strategic organizer, particularly around environmental justice. Ramon and Michelle have been really devoted to the work of environmental and food justice for several decades now. And they're going to be leading the way with thinking about how we can, again, do this work of using astrology strategically to help us with a lot of what needs to be happening probably in our local communities now and in the very near future when it comes to sustainability. So if you're interested in coming to that retreat, we would love to spend time with you in person. I'm really excited to get off the internet and into 3D space or 5D space or however many dimensions, we can fill that space with. And you can find more information in the show notes as well, and everything at embodiedastrology.com. I am wishing you all the best in Cancer season. I'm sending you love. I am really wishing you abundance and care. I'm wishing you deep peace and joyful connection across your many multitudinous relationships. I hope to see you in embodied astrology spaces sometime soon. You can find me every week in somatic space, where we work with the current astrology through our bodies, through our breath, through visualization practices. It is a drop-in space. You can hang out and test it out any week for like $10, or you can join the membership, $60 a month. You can hang out with me every single week in somatic space, and then once a month also for tea time, where we have just really generative, fun conversations around astrology right now. We work with each other's charts, etc. Again, everything that EA offers is offered at a tiered pricing with scholarships available for anyone who needs. So please don't let cost be a barrier. Find more information again on the website or in the show notes. Until next time, my dears, bye for now.